So first I thought it would just be useful if we talked about what regeneration plans are or can be. Fundamentally they're planning instruments, so they can identify a vision for an area, they can describe future land uses, and they can also make changes to planning documents that enable those land uses to occur. And the other thing they tend to do, if we look at the WIMAC experience, is they identify the actions that need to happen for those land uses to actually be given effect to. So the legislative process for developing regeneration plans is set out in the Greater Christchurch Regeneration Act that was enacted in April this year. There are 4 main steps. So the first step is that we develop a draft outline. So the purpose of an outline is that it pretty much talks to process. So it sets out the steps and the timeframes for developing the regeneration plan. It identifies the areas and the places and the things that the plan will cover. So geographic scope, what it will consider on the way through. And importantly for today, it identifies public engagement opportunities. So the when and the how we will engage with communities and others. So outlines are about the how, not about the what. And they don't go into detail, so they don't start to talk to uses or how those uses are affected or where they should go. It's a roadmap for how we get to the end answer. The first outline that we're going to develop covers the red zone land between Barbados Street and Stanmore Road. And the intention is that we'll do separate outlines for the other areas. So each of these areas will have their own regeneration plan. When we develop the outline, we also are required under the legislation to provide it to all our partners for their views. So our partners in this exercise are the Christchurch City Council, Environment Canterbury, Tākaro Limited, Ngāi Tahu, and the Department of the Prime Minister and Cabinet, who represent central government in this space. So in addition to seeking Tākaro's views on the way through, we also need to get Tākaro's consent to send the draft outline to the Minister. And if Tākaro consents, we then send the outline through to the Minister, and the Minister decides whether or not to approve it. The Minister only has limited grounds on which he cannot approve the outline. So at this point in the process, if we do it properly, we should get through. The next step is that we go into the draft regeneration plans phase. So this is the period where we do all the hard work. Now the draft plan has to be developed in accordance with the process set out in the outline. So we have to make sure that we comply with the process that we've committed to through that document. And in particular, the public engagement that we've committed to, the way in which we've committed to developing the plan. As we go through that process, we will work with our partners. So again, we will be working with the Council, ECAN, Ngāi Tahu, Tākaro, and the Department of the Prime Minister and Cabinet. Under the Act, there's only one specified period of mandatory public engagement, and that is once the draft plan is produced. So we're required to publicly notify it and seek written comments on it. There's no time period specified in the Act for how long that period should be. It also doesn't specify how we should go about that. But it is expressed in the legislation as a minimum requirement. And the intention of the outline is to provide opportunities for additional public engagement to be provided for. Once that comment period is closed, we must consider those comments and then finalise the draft plan. And then we get to the last step. So the last step is very similar to the last step in the outline process. So we again have to submit the draft plan to Tākaro for their consent, and provided Tākaro provides that consent, then we can send the draft plan to the Minister for approval. In making his decision, the Minister has to have particular regard to the views of Regenerate Christchurch. He also has to consider all the public comments that are provided on the draft plan. The other matters that he is required to consider are the financial and fiscal implications of the plan and whether the plan is in the public interest. If he does not approve the plan, so if he declines it, he has to provide the reasons for doing so to Regenerate Christchurch. So that's it in a nutshell.